You may not be aware, but season 4 of Community was kind of a mess. The shock departure of the showrunner and creator Dan Harmon, his replacement by a writing duo of dubious credentials, together with the first phase of the core cast's partial exodus, resulted in a 13-episode run of fluctuating quality. Sometimes great, sometimes forgettable, sometimes just seeming to misunderstand altogether what had made those first 3 years so memorable. And uniquely, all of this is visible at once in the season's premiere episode, History 101. So in this episode of Streets Ahead, the series where we go season by season looking at every Community season premiere, let's jump into History 101, what it tells us about this show, how it works more widely, and how perfectly it prefigures the controversial season that'd follow, starting with the fact that it's not a bad episode. It isn't a great one, of course, not really, and we'll get to that soon, but it is decent. This episode sees the Greendale 7 attend their first day as seniors, the first day of their last year at Greendale, theoretically at least. Abed, who's famously not overly fond of change, is struggling with this, so Britta tells him to go to his happy place when he's feeling anxious about this finality. This is Abed we're talking about, of course, so that happy place is the show he's always talking about, his vision of their life at Greendale as a conventional TV sitcom.
This is my show, it's about me, and all my friends on Abed TV.
But while Abed's resisting the end, Jeff's doing his best to hasten it. Turns out all he needs to graduate now is a history credit. Honestly, I'll never understand how American colleges work, but the school system was hacked. There's a problem with the class registers, so the dean tells everyone that anyone who wants to preserve their spot in History of Ice Cream has to compete in the Hunger Deans, a lavish, loosely themed series of tests, trials, and feats of strength.
Not the feats of strength.
Eventually, these two stories come together. Jeff lets go of the dean's balls, he helps break Abed out of one of those classic Abed imagination jams, the 7 end up in a regular history class, and that's about it. Here's the thing, there is plenty to like. At times, the dialogue feels like it's trying too hard to sound harmony, but there's no shortage of snappy lines.
Is all this for the history of ice cream?
They overbooked it, so it's first come, first serve now.
Just like real ice cream.
But most of the positives here come in those Abed TV sequences. We'll talk later about why these work conceptually, but they're also just really well put together. These parts of the episode pull off the multicam, studio sitcom look perfectly. The way History 101 uses unorthodox camera angles and blocking to suggest an open-fronted set, distorts the cast's familiar timing, has them wait for the laugh track, and injects the odd few Bazinga-esque artificial catchphrase reads.
Oh Lord, no!
All this is equal parts amusing and uncanny, and having Abed recast Pierce as Fred Willard is the icing on the cake. When Abed TV gets folded in on itself, when we swap out multicam mode for Greendale babies, the animation is spot on, and I'm not ashamed to say that this theme song very regularly gets stuck in my head. And the speech Jeff gives, or doesn't really, between Babytown and Abed TV, that feels like vintage Community. There is plenty to like, particularly in this side of the episode. But this is season 4, so it's not all sunshine and roses. You may have noticed that I didn't mention the Britta Troy C-plot yet, and that's because there's really not much to mention. After the two fan-favourite characters grew close last time around, Season 4 coupled them up properly, but whatever spark once lit up episodes like Virtual Systems Analysis never really reappears in this episode, or really throughout this season. Ironically, the only really involving part of the Britta Troy romance is its end.
I wish I had my own body back!
That being said, I do wonder how much this was Season 4's fault. Maybe we'd be right to lay the blame here at the new showrunners, the newer writers, but maybe these characters simply weren't as compatible as they seemed. Maybe those flashes of chemistry earlier on in the show were just that, flashes. I guess we'll never know. Speaking of squandered potential, the end of this episode sees the Dean move next door to Jeff, and the rest of this season does diddly squat with this. There's like one bit in one episode this whole season that half-heartedly brings this back, but it's such a feeble payoff that it taints the setup, exposes it, reveals the utter lack of purpose here. And hey, on that note, The Hunger Deans story is the quintessence of Season 4. It's a misfire. It's a crudely fashioned approximation of the show's past pastiches. It's the aesthetic of Community with empty space beneath. And if you sat there wondering why I'm being so negative, what differentiates the Hunger Deans from similar referential set pieces in the show's past, its future even, ask yourself this. Why is it here? What purpose does it serve? A narrative one, obviously. It's the mechanism by which Jeff attempts to keep the group's history seats, but beyond that, why does the episode choose to move that story forward in this way? Because typically, Community does stuff like this for a reason. The claymation fantasy adventure in Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas wasn't made because claymation is fun and cool. Well, I guess that's part of it, but there, Abed regressed into the childhood mythology of Christmas because his messy, adult reality had become untenable. His mum's choice to spend her holiday with a new family had shattered the narrative Abed had built around Christmas, what it meant, and so we're thrown into this Christmas fiction pastiche, this soupy hodgepodge of holiday characters, tropes, settings, and stories. Abed's sifting through this world, this composite space of public domain Christmas narratives, to try and find a replacement, a new meaning of Christmas, hence the story, hence the presentation, and so on. And sure, it isn't always quite that elegant, but there is always a reason, some interesting way in which the high-concept rigmarole speaks to our characters and where they are. Season 5's Meow Meow Beans episode comes to mind. The way the app's effects by the third act transform Greendale into a classic 70s sci-fi dystopia, ruled by empty niceties and emotional blackmail, is an extension of Jeff and Shirley's beef at the start.
Part of making sacrifices for my loved ones is not expecting my loved ones to make sacrifices.
Earlier in that season, the hot lava game is engineered and stretched out by Abed, both consciously and otherwise. Hot lava is a game that could go on indefinitely, and that's why it was picked here. The prolonging is the point, the staying in the fantasy, because when it ends, Troy goes. There's none of that in the Hunger Deans. The Dean wants Jeff to compete for him, dance with him, sure, but why frame that around the Hunger Games? What's the link? What's the reason? If anyone watching this has an answer, drop it down below, but I've got nothing. There's no point to the pastiche, and yeah, that'd be a recurring problem for this season. The other reason this part of the episode feels wrong is similar, actually. There's no reason for it conceptually, but there's also no real reason for it diegetically. Why would the Dean do this? As we've seen, Greendale is a place where all manner of wacky nonsense ends up happening, but there's always a ramp up, always some nominal cause and effect. Perhaps everyone at Greendale is a level 7 susceptible, maybe they take things way too far, but things start sensibly. The first paintball fiasco was supposed to be a controlled affair, but the Dean made the mistake of offering too desirable a prize. Next time round, there's obscene amounts of wealth at stake, and the same thing happens with hot lava. Pillows and Blankets gets off the ground because of the potential world record. The election episode happens to try and get Sleepy Joe to drop by, the KFC spaceship affair was a PR stunt, and the Law & Order Yam trial tomfoolery is the result of our characters' desperate attempts to salvage their grades. It's never just abstract parodic mayhem. The stuff that happens here may seem unreal, but it's unreal in a real way. There is some logic to it. And we just don't get that here. The only thing History 101 gives us is the suggestion that the Dean did it to, dance with Jeff? And all this time and money spent, all this disruption to the school for that is just out of character for the Craig Pelton we'd seen beforehand. So, like all the worst parts of this fourth year, it feels wrong, like an ill-thought-out parody of Community that's missed the mark. The Hunger Deans is nothing. It doesn't work in the same way as Community's past referential showstoppers, and there's no reason for it. It's a semi-timely reference, and that's pretty much it. But the same cannot be said for Abed TV. It all tracks. Abed's happy place being this show fits perfectly with what we know about him already, as does his overuse of this new mental tool. This side of the episode works, it makes sense, it has a reason, and it speaks to Abed. This is a character well known for his aversion to change, his use of complex, imagined scenarios to resist or acclimatize to change. He's a character for whom TV, particularly classic sitcoms with their endlessly renewing status quos, is the lens through which life is approached. Abed's been using this lens to navigate his college experience. He's been viewing Greendale in part as his cheers, as his friends. But sooner or later, this was going to run into difficulties, because sooner or later he'd have to leave. And the first day of senior year understandably brings this problem into sharp focus. The way Abed gets sucked into his happy place, then the way that happy place breaks down, folds in on itself, is a really interesting and enjoyable visualization of Abed's journey to resolving this problem. First avoidance, then the unwelcome realization that time isn't something you can avoid, and finally Abed's use of this mental construct to reconcile himself with change. It's even more poetic in retrospect, acting almost as a premonition of Community's eventual finale, which also employed imagined versions of the show to have those last remnants of the Greendale 7 reach an acceptance of the group's end. Abed TV is all of this, so what better way to open the 4th season, the 4th and supposedly final year this group will spend at Greendale. This is great, and yet we find it lodged in an otherwise limp episode, opening an often limp season. That disconnect is disconcerting, but in a way it makes sense. When thinking about Season 4, it's important to remember that not everyone left. Harmon left, the writer's room changed, but that change wasn't total. Plenty of the minds behind plenty of classic episodes were still here. There were still people who really got the show, what it had been, what it could be, but they were rubbing shoulders, were led by people who maybe didn't so much. Danny Gonzalez has a video that touches on how strange a choice the studio's hand-picked replacement showrunners were for this show, which I'll link below, and the result was this, the so-called gas leak year. At once familiar and alien. We see all this in History 101. It exemplifies the contradiction and liminality of Season 4. It isn't Community, not quite, but it isn't not Community either. There are some points which feel familiar, feel solid, feel unreal in a real way, feel like a natural continuation of the show's halcyon days. And for a moment you forget about what's to come, about the puppets, about the everything is connected prequel episode that utterly misunderstands the appeal of the show's basic premise. But then we cut back to the Hunger Deans and it all comes flooding back. Dan Harmon compared Season 4 to watching your family. And that's fucking stupid, obviously, but even as a viewer, that mix of the familiar and the alien in the gas leak year feels unnerving, wrong even. And if you are the guy who came up with this show, with these characters, watching this must have prompted some complicated emotions, feelings of jealousy, violation even. So maybe it isn't like that, but maybe it is like being split from your family, like seeing someone else take your spot, take your family to all the places you went to, take them to fancier, better versions of them even, but without knowing what it was you all enjoyed together about them. Even as you look on though, every now and then things click, and it looks just like old times. So there is a sort of synecdoche here. The experience of watching History 101 is the experience of watching Season 4. Not a bad experience per se, but often a perplexing one. There are great moments here, just as there are great episodes to come. This isn't Community, but this is still Community. It's at once the last gasp of that original Community, the last year with the full cast, the last year with our characters as students, and a strange aberration, a 13-episode intermission before that original Community starts up again. Watching History 101, you see all this at once, as Season 4 flickers between a worthy attempt to follow up the show's golden era and gas leak-induced mayhem. And at the very least, there's something interesting there, right? Maybe that's why, at the end of the day, I do have a soft spot for this episode. Why, in my mind, the good edges out the bad. For years, Community viewers have dismissed this 4th year, not altogether unfairly. Some have even followed after Harmon, talked about it with pure vitriol. The dominant narrative is that this whole thing is a write-off. Watching History 101 makes you wonder if maybe as a fanbase, as a community, we ought to rethink that just a little. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed episode 4 of Streets Ahead. If you did, you are legally obligated to like and share the video. Special thanks as always to all my Patreon supporters on screen now, especially Daniel Goldhorn, Heather Long, Ryan Emily, and Weirdy Beardy. I'm eternally grateful to all of you, the support really makes a difference, and I'll see you all next time.